Hi, welcome again to The Road Ahead, Senior Living. I'm Jacqueline Proctor, Deputy Commissioner of the West Virginia Bureau of Senior Services, and I'm always pleased to welcome you to another one of our shows. Today we have a sensitive topic, a serious topic, an important topic that I want everyone to really understand and feel more comfortable discussing, and that's the subject of older adults and suicide prevention. With me today, I'm very fortunate to have Sheila Moran, who is Director of Communications and Marketing with First Choice Services of Charleston. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So this overall topic, I know that in general in the United States, we are aware of suicides and hopefully the ability to prevent them for a younger age range. But we don't often think about senior citizens doing such a thing for a variety of reasons. But it does stand out for us because of the rural nature of our state and our geography alone. So let's leap right in. I do want to ask you about First Choice, but just let's leap right into that particular nugget. What generally do we need to know or understand better to remove the stigma of suicide?
So, suicide is an issue in our country and certainly here in West Virginia, where we lose nearly a person every day to suicide. And I think a lot of times you're right. When people think about suicide, they think about younger people. And it's certainly they're at risk, but actually older people are at greater risk. And it's a really big issue and something I think not talked about as much. And I can tell you that older people are less likely to call for help. So that's certainly an issue.
Gotcha. Well, recently I was in Washington at a policy forum event for SAMHSA, and we were working on generating a policy for that prevention and how to bring together the resources that we actually already have here in West Virginia to get them, spread them out, make citizens more aware. So now I'm going to go to tell me about First Choice and what makes that company so special.
Sure, thank you. So First Choice is a company, nonprofit here in Charleston, and we have about 15 different helplines. One of our taglines is, whatever the problem, there's a helpline for that. Mm-hmm. So we have helplines including the 1-800-GAMBLER line, the Tobacco Quit line, the Help for WV Addiction line, the Children's Crisis and Referral line, the West Virginia Navigator line to sign people up for marketplace insurance. We answer the suicide line, not just here in West Virginia, but also nationally. Among several other helplines.
That is a lot of work. How do you guys keep it all organized?
We've really grown. We have over 200 staff, and we take about 200,000 calls, texts, and chats per year. I will say we are a well-oiled machine. We have great systems in place and quality assurance to make sure that we're doing a good job.
So if someone feels a need, specifically in the category of considering harming themselves, what would a typical process be? Would they call you? Could they text you? And what would they receive on the other end?
So you can call, you can text, or you can chat online. And we get increasingly over the last few years, we're getting more and more texts. I think more people just comfortable talking that phone way. Yeah. Sure, but you can do it anyway. And there's even a system if you're hard of hearing. There is a when you go to the 988 website, there is a way that you can speak to people in that way over a screen to make it easier for you. So awesome. It's very accessible. Also, for different special populations, if you're Spanish speaking or LGBTQ or veteran, there are buttons that you can push when you call in to speak to someone specifically in that population. But when you call in general from here in West Virginia, you're going to get someone at our office, a real human, who answers the phone, and that's important. So we don't want you to deal with a phone tree or too many pressing numbers to get to a person, right? Nobody wants that. So you're going to get a real human. And when we train our people, we always talk to them about just having human conversations. Mm-hmm. Often people will say, "What's the script?" We purposely don't have a script like that. We want them to really talk talk on a one-on-one basis with people to see what's going on with them and offer them assistance.
Now, you've been with First Choice a while. What do you understand, either statistically or anecdotally, about what causes someone to even consider harming themselves in that way, to think that suicide is the only choice they have to make?
Sure. So a lot of times it's not that they want to die by suicide, but it's that they can't think of another way out. It may be that they have things going on in their life, loss of loved ones. They may have a lack of support. They may be facing, physical or mental health barriers, and they just can't find another way out. And so that's a lot of what the 988 line does, is it provides them some support, someone to talk to, someone to, discuss options and what's going on with them.
Well, that is very critical because with the Bureau, and with our network of providers across the state, we have 55 senior centers, one in every county, and they provide an array of services for seniors. One of the things that always stands out with the work we do is the rural nature of our state, that you can drive, 2, 3, 5 miles off the interstate and you're in the country, you're in the woods, you're in the mountains. You have to practically have grown up in various communities to understand where the back roads are and how to take them and what your signposts are, even if the signpost isn't there. And I know that with regards to our providers, one of the ways we try to assist our seniors is when meals are delivered, especially for homebound seniors, we also combine a wellness check. So what are some of the things that you would like to point out that these drivers who deliver meals, as well as staff at the senior centers, but the drivers in particular, what should they look for or consider in terms of not necessarily someone taking their life immediately, but things that might concern them?
That is a great question, and that just gave me the idea that we should maybe even provide training for people in those situations, because it's really important to notice what's going on and to talk to someone. I think we have a tendency to say to people like, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Everything's going good for you?" And just getting a cursory answer. And if someone says, well, not doing great, things are falling apart, it's human nature to just want to wrap that up and say, gosh, I hope things get better. I hope, I'm sure you'll be fine. But that's what we call an invitation for someone to talk about what's going on with them. And if you take that invitation, if you go further and you talk to them about, what's really going on in their life, you're going to get some insight. And then what's really important when we talk about suicide is to ask the question. So it's hard. It's a very awkward conversation to have, especially if you're not especially close to someone, to say, are you thinking about killing yourself? But that's the most crucial question. It's not uncommon for people to have suicidal thoughts, and of course most people aren't acting on them, but it's important to let someone know that you're a safe person, you have a welcoming space, that if you want to talk about that, if you're having those feelings, you're available and you can talk about it. So we have our helpline people really practice that, asking that question. Are you thinking about hurting yourself? And being very genuine about it and truly listening to the answer.
Yeah, I like what you said about some additional training, because this policy event that I went to included the idea of expanding the knowledge base of what to look for and what to consider when you're meeting with a senior who the delivery person may be the only person they see in that given week, maybe twice a week, but probably not more than that, especially depending on how far out they are from the senior center. So I think we have a list of things, potential or risk items that you can look for. If the studio will flip to that, I'd love for you to look over there at the screen and talk about the items on that for a second. So things like, until they get it up, things like the house being disheveled a little bit, or the vitality of the personality being different.
Right, changes are really important. So especially, if you see someone going from typically a neat, orderly home to all of a sudden it's a mess and they don't seem to be able to keep up. Someone who, all of a sudden is not eating, who had an appetite and there's nothing, physical going on with them. Someone who's sleeping all the time. Someone who's showing, sometimes what we call reckless disregard. So not actively suicidal, but they might say, I just don't care. So doing dangerous things, maybe like drinking or taking medications while driving, things like that, that just are not in character for that person.
Well, and I think that captures it totally, the not in character for a particular individual. And on the senior center level, they're so familiar with the members who come in for congregate meals, as well as those who they deliver home meals to, that they really do know the personality and the differences. So that's critically important. Is there a particular age group? We learned at the Policy Institute that one of the very critical age ranges for potential harming of oneself is white males 80 and above.
Yes.
And I was rather taken aback by that. Why is that a very serious category?
Sure. Well, you mentioned especially the rural nature of our state, and I think that's something to consider. A lot of times, someone may be older, they may be lonely. Perhaps they've lost their wife. Maybe the kids are busy with their own lives. They're not having a lot of day-to-day interaction. Losing sense of purpose. We always think
Very
about
important, yeah.
retirement, and it sounds great to most of us, but in reality, many people who are retired will say, that was a point in their life where they really started feeling depressed because they felt like they didn't have anything to offer anymore. And so, if they're not active in other things, in other groups, in church, in doing some sort of another part-time job or with their family, they may just feel isolated and like there's no one around who appreciates them or to talk with.
Yeah, I unfortunately have a sad story to tell, very brief, but I was recently told by a provider that there was a lovely lady in their group who came to the center regularly and was pretty active and seemed to enjoy other people's company very much. And she became a bit despondent, probably more than a bit. And one of the main reasons was that, and not judging, but her family, she didn't feel like her family was really connecting with her. And I don't know for sure if the family was in state or out of state. Out of state makes it that much harder. And she didn't have any particular illnesses, so there were no health challenges. And I know that can be most certainly a trigger. But she unfortunately ended up taking her life because she just didn't feel connected anymore. And that is a true tragedy, which we're trying to prevent.
That really is, and that's exactly right. A lack of connectivity, that is a huge issue for many people, and especially seniors.
Yeah. And also, too, I think with regards to seniors with their pretty much standard limited income, when it comes to things, when things change and they can't pay the electric bill that month or the water bill or whatever the case may be, then they start to lose a sense of their own personhood, wouldn't you say?
Yes, finances are another issue because unlike younger people who might say, well, I'll get a second job or I can work this off somehow, limited options for
Right.
older adults. And so they may feel very stuck and they may be very proud and hesitant to reach out and ask for help paying the utility bill, that sort of thing.
Right, right. We're very strong West Virginians and we give help, but we don't always seek it out. That's true. So we're going to take a quick break. I want to share with the audience the fantastic promotional spot that you let us use for the show about suicide in adults.
In these mountains, life can be beautiful, but it can also be hard. We've all felt it, but West Virginians band together. We help each other. If you are feeling stressed, worried, anxious, or depressed, call or text 988 for free help from someone who understands. Everyone's struggle is different, and finding hope and support is for everyone. Get the resources you need right now. There's no fee, no judgment, just real help right now. Call or text 988 today.
I appreciate that commercial very much because it talks about being a lifeline, and that is so critical in terms of understanding and removing even the perception of this isn't something we talk about, or I'm embarrassed to say to someone I've thought about it. Tell us or share with us what you understand are some good ways to destigmatize the concept or the conversation surrounding suicide.
So it's important to understand that suicidal thoughts are not uncommon. And so to say to someone, that you're concerned about them and to really listen to what's going on with them. Have you ever been to a doctor and they do a quick assessment, and a lot of times they say something like, you're not thinking about hurting yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not the right way to do it because, of course, our nature is to say, nope, everything is fine. And so what you want to do is be open and just have an open-ended conversation with someone. And it can be difficult. It really can. You've got to be prepared. If the person says, yes, I'm feeling suicidal, what's the next step? Well, the next step is keeping them safe. So that might mean just staying with them, talking with them. Sometimes you've got to actually take some different steps. For instance, here in West Virginia, and this is a very sensitive topic because we do have guns embedded in our culture, but we know that among older adults, especially males, the way that they often die by suicide is by firearm.
Oh, okay.
It's the most common way, and so it's important to talk about that. If they're at a place where they're genuinely feeling suicidal and they have access to a firearm, it may be time to have a conversation where you say, hey, just till we get this straightened out and you're feeling better, let me take that for you. Let's do something different. Or whatever the thing is that they have access to that they're considering using to end their life.
Right. I would think too that because this is, we do have a strong gun culture for hunting, among other things, that perhaps even securing that weapon or those weapons better would be helpful. Perhaps definitely not leaving them in the home, but being very sensitive to people's amendment rights and the fact that that's all they've ever used them for was turkey hunting or whatever else kind of hunting, but that in this instance, if they feel really desperate, they might use that as an option, which would be very sad. Tell us more about 988 and the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Tell us about that. How does that work? If I were to call in and say, I'm not feeling real great, but I'm not really sure what to do, what would happen?
Well, first, you're right. It's Suicide and Crisis Line, so it's not just suicide, and that's important. That was a name change a couple years ago to let people know that they don't have to be actively suicidal. If they're feeling anxious, depressed, in crisis, they can call. So when they call, they're going to reach a real human, and that person is going to talk to them about what's going on with them. I'll tell you some things that aren't going to happen. Someone is not going to demand your name and your address and your telephone number. You can call in anonymously. And another thing that's highly unlikely to happen is sending emergency medical services in person. That's a misconception. Many people think, oh, if I say I'm suicidal, they're going to send the police. That's extremely rare.
And then the neighbors will know and everybody will know. And, oh my goodness. Yeah.
The vast majority of time we're able to handle it over the telephone. The very few times that EMS is activated, it's usually with the cooperation of the person saying, look, you're right, I'm not able to say I'm safe and I need somebody to get me somewhere safe. So very rare that we would do that.
I really like your ongoing use of the word safe. It's safe to talk to people on the crisis hotline. It's safe in terms of the conversation we're having. It's private. They will only do as much as hopefully the person calling will allow them to do, but that it's safe. I think that's probably a big consideration in terms of even speaking about it, getting people to speak about it. Do you, or have you had, or has your organization had the opportunity to present in churches or other local community organizations? Because we know that our communities are tight, they're small, and they will hopefully listen to other leadership groups in their counties. So.
Yes, we're trying more and more to get out into the community to talk to people, because I think a lot of people, another misconception they have is you need to be a psychologist or a counselor to be able to help someone through this. But that's not the case. And in fact, most of the time when you're dealing with someone, it's going to be a friend, family member, or neighbor who's having this conversation. So we're trying to get out as much as possible in front of people and talk to that. This month we've been doing some online seminars, again, for the general public, not just social workers. It's an hour-long session on how can you help when someone is feeling suicidal.
Where that's a free webinar as it is, where can they find it?
It is free. We're having one tonight, but it's been very well attended, so we think we're going to continue these in the future. And you can always find these on our website, westvirginia988.org, or our Facebook page.
That's great. As you were talking, I was thinking too, and that's one of the things that we expound at the Bureau, that in terms of, and the providers, in terms of community, that their caregiver could most certainly benefit the person they're giving care to by understanding this, their families, their neighbors and friends. All of those people are part of the ecosystem, as it were, of helping to prevent these suicides. I'm trying to think what else it is that might be a barrier or keep people from actually speaking to you. Is there a difference in gender even? Are women more likely to call than men? Men who've had military careers, are they even less likely? What do you understand about that?
Right. I think women in general seek help more. You know, unfortunately, men do have higher rates of suicide, so that's certainly an issue. I mean, I think you might see the same thing with older folks. They might be a little more hesitant to reach out. You know, I think we've done a good job of destigmatizing mental health among the younger generations. I think that older adults still may feel a little uneasy about seeking help. And again, they may have some misconceptions about what's going to happen. They may not understand that this is just a simple conversation, and it might make you feel a lot better. You know, a lot of people have friends and family around, however, they may feel judged by them. So that's what our helpline specialists specialize in, not judging.
Right. If I had an older neighbor, yes, we'll stick with that. How could I, or what could you share with me, how could I start a conversation with them? I know them. I say, hello, Miss Smith, how have you been? What's going on? I sometimes will visit with them, have coffee with them. How does one even broach that subject?
Sure. So, you know, as you're talking to someone and asking them how they are, they might give what we call invitations, things where they might say, you know, I just don't feel like being around anymore. I don't feel appreciated. I don't have anything to do. I'm just a burden on everyone. And so when you hear statements like that, that's an invitation to ask some more questions and to show some empathy. So, you know, it sounds like you're really feeling down. It sounds like you feel like you can't get any help. You know, and I have to say, sometimes when people feel like that, they're feeling suicidal. Are you thinking of hurting yourself? And again, it can be a little bit awkward, but you got to practice that. And then when someone, sometimes they're surprised that someone would ask that in such an open-ended way. And if they say yes, you've got to be ready to talk to them more about it, to help stay with them, to keep them safe, and to connect them with help. So, you know, whether it be saying, well, you know, maybe we can get you in to see your doctor. Maybe you could see a counselor, or as simple as, you know, there's that 988 line. It's 24 hours, totally free and anonymous, and you can just call them anytime to talk about your feelings.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I think that blends in very well with being a neighbor, being in the community, being familiar with the person, and that's why I mentioned too the churches and other organizations, because I think people would be more likely to trust their pastoral care, although they might be still a little hesitant to say anything because, oh, you know, the pastor knows, oh boy, what does he think of me on Sunday? But I think that whole concept of what others think of me that veil needs to go away, because we don't want people to not seek help because they're concerned about what other people think. That just doesn't help anyone.
Absolutely.
So, can you share with us a little bit more? We have some time left. 3 minutes is a long time, but anyway, we have some time left to talk about other avenues that people can seek help. Because I was thinking, with regards to First Choice, you do have all of those multiple types of helplines for different issues, whether it's substance abuse, gambling, or whatever. Do you find sometimes, and I would not be surprised, but do you find sometimes that a gambling issue could trigger a suicide response, or a drug issue would trigger someone saying, let's just end it and I'll be out of my misery?
Absolutely, and that's why we're so fortunate to have so many helplines combined in one place, is because we can usually help someone find resources in their area. You mentioned gambling. It actually has one of the highest rates of suicide of any addiction.
Really?
Yeah, because a lot of times people have lost everything, and, financially, and especially if they're older, they can't recoup those losses. So that's a big issue. With addiction, certainly, we have a big overdose rate in this state. In fact, when we talk about our suicide rate, there's certainly some overlap with people dying by suicide or overdose, and which was it? Was this intentional or not? So a lot of times people think that suicides are actually undercounted in this state, in the country, really.
Well, I've been really fascinated by all that you've shared with us. What one thing could you leave with us today to remember to do, that we could tuck in our minds to be more aware, to be more connected to the possibility? Sometimes, things occur in our lives. We've talked to this person or that person throughout the course of the day, and maybe later in the evening we'll think, what did she say X, and should that concern me? What one thing can we remember from this program, among others, to help us with folks?
Sure. I would say to slow down, because I think a lot of times people are in a hurry, and as you said, you might talk to someone and they seem okay, but then they said something concerning. So slow down, think about it, and if you need to go back and follow up with them, do that. It's really important. You really could save a life.
Yes, you could. Well, I want to thank you tremendously for being with us today. These programs are sent out by the West Virginia Library Television Commission, and they do a great job, and we're always happy to share new, important information such as this, and we hope that you too have learned a few things today from our guest, Ms. Moran, and the First Choice Services of Charleston. If you need help, you know where to call, you know what to do. Reach out, don't ever hesitate. And I thank you always for being with us on The Road Ahead Senior Living. Have a great day.